The Fallen Angel by Natalie, read by Lex. Castiel did not understand what it was like to love. At least, he didn't used to. He was made to be a soldier of heaven, a force to be reckoned with. He lived by the instructions of more important angels, or instructions sent by his Holy Father. There was no choices of his making, no will of his own. He did what he was told, acted out his duties, felt nothing. For millions upon millions of years, Castiel obeyed the rules of heaven. This was all he had ever known. Castiel had seen many things in his very long life. He had witnessed the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, had seen the birth of America, watched as Picasso created his first piece of art. He had seen and heard much, experienced much, but nothing could have possibly prepared him for love. He used to think of humans as ants, insignificant, small, their lifespans a blink of an eye compared to his millennia. He always thought that they were fascinating, that his father's creation was beautiful, that he wanted to protect them, but that didn't change how minuscule they were compared to him. One September day of the year 2008, he was given the task of retrieving Dean Winchester, the righteous man, from hell. That was the last mission he blindly followed. Castiel had heard every word that Dean Winchester spoke from the depths of hell. Mostly he screamed and cried until his voice was raw. Other times he would whisper and mutter things. Many times he would call for his brother. Regardless, Castiel heard it all. Then Castiel gripped him tight and raised him from perdition. Those were his first words to the righteous man. After he had rebuilt his broken body, piece by piece, from the green of his eyes to every freckle across his nose. Castiel knew every inch of Dean Winchester before the man even knew who Castiel was. Back then, he hadn't quite yet realized how beautiful he was. Body, mind, soul. He found it almost ironic that lifting Dean Winchester had caused his own fall. Castiel didn't quite know when it was exactly that he had fallen in love with Dean. He only knew that soon after he had saved Dean, he had, for the first time in his life, begun to feel. It was a strange thing, emotions. They crept up on him, barely there at first. It started with just the small things, like an ache in his chest, the pang of something unfamiliar, as he watched Anna kiss Dean. He would later discover that that emotion was jealousy. Before he knew it, he had begun to like Dean. That was what Uriel called it, said it was a weakness. At first, that's what it felt like, a weakness, but slowly it felt less like a weakness and more like a strength. Private talks late at night, a deep conversation on the bench at the child's playground. Each moment he spent with Dean, he knew that he had begun to change. He started to question everything around him, question his orders and his faith and everything he had ever known. He went against his brothers and sisters, he rebelled, all for Dean, all because of Dean. Soon, he was more human than he was angel. When he first realized he was in love with Dean, he found it peculiar. He knew the other angels were disappointed, were ashamed of him. He couldn't bring himself to feel the same way. How could he? He could never be ashamed of loving Dean, even if he tried. He was proud that he got to know him, got to be his best friend, his family. Dean was more worthy of worship, of faith, of love than any god. There was once a time when he didn't know what had caused him to do everything he had done since 2008, what had made him fall so far. Then he realized it was all because of him. He loved everything about Dean, his green eyes, his sandy-colored hair. He loved how he got excited about the things he was interested in, like the Wild West, classic rock or horror movies. He loved that Dean was obsessed with his car, and that he loved to eat pie and fatty foods. He loved how strong he was, how brave, how loyal, how he would do anything for the people he cared about, especially for his brother. He loved how humorous he was. Even if he didn't understand most of his references, Castiel loved his soul. And he loved him despite all his flaws too, despite how broken he was, despite the fact that Dean couldn't even love himself, have faith in himself. Castiel supposed he would just have to love him, have faith in him enough for the both of them. He knew that would be easy. Loving Dean was one of the easiest things he had ever done. Maybe if he loved him enough, Dean would learn to love himself. It was strange how just one man affected him so much, how he was unmoved, unwavering, emotionless for millions of years, only to change so completely, so irreversibly. The thing was, it didn't matter if Dean loved him back or not. He was happy and content in just loving him, in just knowing him, being by his side. Of course, Castiel wanted to be with Dean, wanted Dean. He always would. But what he had now? A place in Sam and Dean's ragtag unconventional little family? A home? A place where he belonged? That was all that he needed. It felt like he was always waiting for Dean to come along and change his life. And if, by some small chance, Dean loved him even half as much as he loved Dean, then Castiel could wait. He had already waited this long. He could wait a little longer.